So I tried to mount the shocks in a way where when the shocks bottom out, the tires aren't, the top of the tires aren't sticking up past the hood. Because remember, we are gonna have to cut out fenders in the fiberglass body, and we don't want the fenders having to be basically as tall as the fiberglass body. But I mean, yeah, look at that. That's yeah, the suspension has a little bit more way to go, and the tire basically comes flush with the top of this. So yeah, how's that gonna work? Ooh, what was that? Oh, whoops. Alright, so that popped out and yanked that off. So let me fix that. Alright, let me bend this back. Yeah, I don't think I had this this bolt all the way installed. So let me redo this and let me tack right here. Alright, so a couple videos ago of this project, when we finished the front suspension, we realized that when the suspension moves up and the tires turn in, the tires hit this tubing right here, which is definitely not good. We definitely need to fix that. So let me cut this off. I'll cut this off down here, and we just need to move them a little bit further back and re-tack them in place. So that actually wasn't that hard to do, and I added another bend in this piece of tubing to try to get this just a little bit further back. So now the tire can turn a lot more. It's still kind of It still kind of hits this piece of tubing, but this tire is turned way more than the steering's going to be able to do. So I think it is good enough, which means that is done and we can now move on. I still need to trim this tubing because right now the front tire still kind of hits this, but once I trim that, then the front tires will finally have their full range of motion. Alright, so next thing I want to do is install the seat, but before we can do that, we need to install the drive shaft. Now, this thing is not long enough, so we are going to have to extend it by a little bit. So let me cut this in half and figure out how we're going to extend it. I want to make sure that I get proper phasing with the drive shaft. I think that is perfect. Weld it. Alright, so the drive shaft is installed and four-wheel drive does seem to be working. Now, the front differential, I do need a rebuild kit because, yeah, it's definitely pretty old in there. And one thing I did, unfortunately, is when I was removing this differential from the project that I stole it off of, I accidentally ripped the wires out. I had to order a new half piece of the gearbox, or the differential, because you can't really fix it, you just order a new one. I just bought that today. So what I did was I took it apart, took the plate that goes against the magnet, and I just bent it really bad. So therefore it's just always engaged. So, but once I get the rebuild kit and also get that other piece, I'll fix it to where we can turn it on and off. Now, I just measured the gearing between the secondary pulley and the tires. Now, it's a little bit slower than I thought, even with the slight overdrive that I did between the jack shaft and the input of this gearbox. Remember, this is a 20-tooth sprocket on the top, going to a 19-tooth, so it's overdriven by a tiny little bit. And I just measured the gearing, so every time the tires spin once, The secondary pulley, this spins 9.5 times in high range, and in low range, it spins 21.5 times. Now, for comparison, the Mini Baja Bug, which has the exact same engine, slightly smaller tires, the gearing between the tires and the secondary pulley is, if I remember correctly, it's like 4 to 4.5 to 1. So this vehicle is going to be more than half the speed of the Mini Baja Bug project in high range. So that's, yeah, kind of unfortunate. We're definitely gonna have to figure out how to get this thing faster. Which I'm now that I'm thinking about this, now I'm glad we had to do the jack shaft, because what we can do is put an even bigger sprocket on this side and put a smaller sprocket on this side to overdrive it even more if we need to really get this thing going a lot faster. Because yeah, 9.5 to 1. That's a little too slow. That's not fast enough, and again, that is high range. So in low range, I'm probably going to be able to walk faster than this thing. So, which is why I'm glad I chose an engine that, you know, revs to high heaven. I am curious how high, you know, these engines rev to, but if I remember correctly, it's like 14 or 15 or 16,000 RPM is like max RPM for these engines. So that's good that we have a really high revving engine for this project. Now, next thing I want to work on is finally getting the seat installed. Now that we have the drive shaft in place, now we can figure out exactly where the seat needs to go. I'm going to try to mount it as low as possible and as far back as possible, but try not to make it to where it's too close to the expansion chamber. Once we get that installed, then I want to install the fiberglass and cut out the fenders in the fiberglass to finally be able to put the fiberglass back on this thing. Alright, moment of truth to see if I can actually fit in this thing. I did try to make it to where the seat is as far back as possible, and I tried to make it to where this thing has more leg room and everything. So far this is not bad, but once the steering wheel's installed, that's going to be a bit harder. So, nice! I can actually extend my legs almost all the way. And there's plenty of room for steering. We are going to have a shifter right here. I mean, this bar is kind of right in my face, so if I'm crashing, yeah, my face is just going to slam against that. But there is a decent amount of shoulder space, which is awesome. So, yeah, in the Mini Baja Bug project, my legs are crammed up like this. I'm basically riding it like this. So this one does have a lot better leg room. I can have room for pedals and everything. I just have to figure out how we're doing steering and where the steering wheel is going to go on this thing. So, yeah, that is awesome. This one is a lot more spacious than the Mini Baja Bug project. Now, I really want to put the fiberglass body back on this thing and cut out the wheel wells, and we are going to have to cut out spots for the engine, which that I kind of want to do later. So right now, let's remove the engine, let's remove the tires, we'll figure out the ride height or the spot where the suspension is going to be all the way collapsed. We'll put the fiberglass body back on this thing and start cutting out the wheel wells. this down. Oh, oh man. That thing is heavy. Alright, so I'm going to set the front and rear suspension to the highest that it can go with the shocks. So therefore, when I put the fiberglass body on this thing, I can measure off of the brake disc the diameter of the tires, so therefore I can mark exactly where on the fiberglass I need to cut for the wheel well. So yeah, the fender is going to have to be basically the same height as the hood. So how is that going to work? Yeah, like I said before, I am kind of regretting the size of tires I chose for this project, because this is, yeah, that's a little bit too big. So what I may do is I may not cut it up to this line, and I may see if I can lower the suspension travel on this thing so the tires doesn't go, so the front tires don't go all the way up to this high when the suspension collapses. Yeah, I had to trim a lot of this fiberglass to be able to let the tires turn and everything, and this is still actually not the highest the suspension travel can go a little bit higher than this, but I think for now it's good enough. We can always trim a little bit more if we need to later. Now, I really want to get the shocks installed on this thing, and then I'll put all the tires on, so therefore we can finally see what this thing's gonna look like. So the rear suspension seems to be a bit on the stiff side, but the engine still needs to be here, so that's going to be another like 45 pounds of weight. So, but I mean, it doesn't really move. So the rear suspension may just be a little on the stiff side. The front suspension is pretty much perfect. Alright, I want to see if it's any easier or harder to get in and out of this thing with the body on it. I may want to add some type of steps on the side of this thing, like how I did with the Mini Baja Bug project, to be able to make it easier to get in and out. So it's not bad. It's not bad getting in and out. It's definitely, you know, it is easier for this one compared to the Mini Baja Bug project. I'm just trying to figure out, you know, where's the steering wheel gonna go? How are we doing controls? So I'm a little tempted to make it to where it's just foot controls because we don't have any cutting brakes and we only have throttle and brakes. I'm almost tempted to make it to where we have just throttle and brakes for the feet and have no hand controls except for steering. That'll make it to where I can use a rack and pinion to make the steering easier. Because I think with these bigger tires, with four-wheel drive, if I do the typical ATV steering, where it's just this to this for full lock, I think I would have to have power steering. But if I have a rack and pinion, I can make it to where it's geared more, and I have to turn the wheel more to turn the wheels, so it'll make it to where I may not have to have a power steering column. So yeah, like I said before, I am trying to make this one a lot more spacious and a lot more roomy in here, so therefore other people can actually drive this thing. Now, when I built the Mini Baja Bug project, I did see some of you guys questioning and commenting about, because on that project and this project, when I'm sitting in this thing, my head is sticking out of the frame, which I know is not safe, that is really dangerous. Some of you guys were questioning, what if I lifted the fiberglass body high enough to where my head isn't sticking out of the frame, and my head will actually be in the roll cage and everything. So to give you guys an idea of what that would look like for this project, here's what this thing looks like now, and here's what this thing would look like if I did that. I would have to lift the fiberglass body 15 inches higher just to be able to have it to where my head is in the frame and in the fiberglass and I can actually see out the windshield. So clearly, yeah, it would not work. It would look ridiculous, and I mean, I guess it would more look like a monster truck, but then you could see my legs. I don't know. For this project, I'm just going to do the same as the Mini Baja Bug project, which I know is not safe, but I will also add a hoop behind my head, as well as I'll probably also build a roll cage that I can bolt on this frame to where when I really want to see what this thing can do, I can bolt the roll cage on and be a lot safer in this thing. Nice. Yeah, these things always look so much smaller when they're off the table.